Well, hey, everybody. Getting ready to record number one episode. How about episode number 197 of Mike in the Midwest? Let's do this. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 197 of Mike in the Midwest, our mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, my name is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast. You can find me on the social media at Be Our Guest Mike. Would love to have a follow over on Twitter this week. That would be awesome. If you are over there, please give me a follow. Also on Instagram at Be Our Guest Mike. And I'm also on Threads. You can look for me over there. And I would love to speak with you this week as well. But of course, the place where all the cool kids are hanging. And I got to say, thank you, because so many of our patrons are the heart and soul of the Be Our Guest Podcast Clubhouse. That's right. It's our Discord server that has many channels of different various topics that we talk about each and every day. We talk Disney dining. We talk Walt Disney World resorts. We talk about international Disney parks. We talk about Disney movies, Disney TV shows. We have a channel called The Living Room where we just hang out. We talk about stuff that's non-Disney, just our lives. Yesterday we were talking about, I love this. I don't even know. I think this actually happened in the dining channel because I don't know how we got to this. Actually, I know how we got to this. One of our great listeners posted they're celebrating their anniversary of Victoria and Albert's. Okay. So this is, again, Mike in the Midwest. This show goes anywhere. This is just us hanging out here. You patrons, you guys are kind of the VIPs of the show. We just hang out here on Sundays for about 30 minutes and talk here on a podcast form. But anyway, one of our listeners was hanging out in the clubhouse there and talking about how they're celebrating an amazing anniversary. They went to Victoria and Albert's. Of course, I've never been there. That's way too fancy for me. I wouldn't even know how to pronounce the food or how to order. But they posted, I think, like 15 pictures of their meal at V&A, right? And of course, the first thing I thought was everything looks small, but it looks small because you get so many courses, right? I mean, you get countless courses. So you're probably going to be full by the end. I'm used to going to like Texas Roadhouse where you get like one plate of food and that's it. Anyway, everything's super fancy, all this. And it's somehow it got to, everybody's congratulating this couple. Great job. Happy anniversary. And somebody throws in that I think that for their anniversary, they got a garage door or a garage door opener or something like that. And then somebody else was like, because, we had a storm, we ended up getting our basement refinished because it was leaking. And then it became how so many of us have to go for practical anniversary gifts. And that's kind of what the clubhouse is. It's a combination. I would say it's probably 80% Disney talk, but it's a place where we can all relate as parents. Some of us are not parents. Some of us are young people. I'm not, but there's a lot of young people over there. Some of us have young kids. Some of us have adult kids like I do. Some of us have teenagers. God help us. We're trying to make it through life at this point, just learning how to drive and having their first jobs and first cars and first loves and all that stuff and drama. I mean, we're all in this together, as a High School Musical used to say, but a clubhouse is just a great place for us to all come together. So all that being said, how do you get there? You just go to beourguestpodcast.com/Discord. And if you're not there, please come over. And I don't think I've even said this on the show. There's a Discord app. You just download an app to your mobile device. It's just called Discord, Discord. And you can search for Be Our Guest Podcast. Boom, right there, and just go. But you might need an invitation. That's why I go to that link, beourguestpodcast.com/Discord. The invitation that's where the invitation is. So just meet us over there. We have a good time. And I mean, folks hang out sometimes in the morning, in the evenings. I'm there when I get my work done. That's my problem is I hear when people post because it makes this little beep sound and I get all excited because I know people are in there because I want to hear beeping a lot. I know during the NFL draft, we have actual like professional sports writers that are listeners of our show that were hanging out. And we have a room called the Sports Center, kind of a nod to ESPN back in the day, which if you're my age, Sports Center was everything before social media took off in the days with like Chris Berman and Stuart Scott And like we get up every morning, like and watch Sports Center before we went to college or high school. I mean, it was it. So anyway, that's a nod to that. But I mean, everybody was dissecting the draft picks is like in real time. That's the cool thing about our Discord, our clubhouse is you can have conversations in real time with video, photos. Anyway, so come on over, get in on the conversation. We talk about the current episodes. We talk about everything else in between. We always have somebody at Walt Disney World posting pictures, Disneyland on cruises. Laura just got back from a fantasy cruise. She posted a few pictures. Let me just tell you what. I got so crazy this morning because I'm 68 days from my fantasy cruise at this moment. And it's all I can think about. I'm consumed with getting on that ship. You know how it is, right? It's like it was too far away to even worry about a while back, right? It was like 200 days out. And when your next trip's like 200 days out, it's so far out you don't really worry about it. But now it's like 68 days. It's getting closer, right? I mean, it's almost May and we sail in July. So it's almost summer and we sail in summer. So my mindset is getting that the cruise is actually going to get here. So I've started watching vlogs. And here's the funniest thing. I gotta tell you guys this because you would appreciate this because you guys are my people. I've been watching this vlog. It was because we're going on a 7-night Eastern Caribbean cruise. We've never done Eastern. We've done the Western cruise 3 times. And so I'm, pretty familiar with like Cozumel, Grand Cayman, Jamaica, stuff, so forth like that. We've never done Eastern, and we're going to St. Thomas. We're going to Tortola, and we're going Keswick. I've been to a bunch of times. But so I'm watching this family. It's a family of 5, and they have like a young kid. They have a little girl. I think she was like 5 or something. They have like a teenage boy. I guess he was probably about 13, and a older daughter. I would guess she's probably about 16 or 17. And I'm watching this whole series. I finished it finally this morning as I was walking on the treadmill. I probably watched the 7 days on this vlog. I would guess was probably about 5 hours. I've watched it over a series of a couple of days. So, of course, like they've been in and out of their stateroom. They've been all over the ship. They've been all over Tortola, their excursion. They've been doing all this and that. And they finally kind of debrief with all their, information, what they thought of the cruise, what they thought of the stateroom, what they thought of the food, the entertainment, kind of like we do on the show. They show their stateroom number. I was like, that stateroom number looks familiar. I pull up my app. That's our stateroom that we're going in. So here I am this whole time. I've been watching for 5 hours. These people go in and out, in and out, in and out. That's the stateroom we're going to be in. So I should have paid attention. Not that it matters. All the staterooms are kind of exactly the same, but they were in the exact stateroom that we're booked in. So it's kind of cool. I know what our stateroom looks like. I mean, they were in it exactly the same one. It's got the Murphy bed that comes out of the wall and we're set. So there you go. So it's kind of ironic that when they showed their door, I was like, that number, why does that number look familiar? Because I don't pay that close attention to like my number before when I book, I'm just like, whatever, it's in that area of the ship. I'm good. I don't need a particular stateroom, but I guess I'd seen it a few times on the app and bam, I pulled out the app. I was like, is that our stateroom? And I looked today and I'm like, darn tootin'. That's our state. That is our exact stateroom that I've been looking at for the last 2 days. So kind of weird, but interesting. Not probably very interesting to you, but more interesting to me. Anyway, so I hope you're doing well and hope you're having a great week. We're going to try to keep these a little shorter. I know they've been getting away from us the last few weeks with our 3 other shows during the week. And we got our live call-in show tonight. We don't need to have we've had long shows lately, and I apologize. We're going to cut those back for you guys. We don't need long shows. All right. So last week we talked about the love for the Autopia. My thesis for that show, which wasn't super clear, was I know people are kind of sour on the Autopia and the Tomorrowland Speedway because they have a huge footprint in the parks, and you could probably use the land for better things in 2024, which I really can't argue with. And some people get like, oh, I can't stand it. Why do they have that here? But the thing is, you got to think about what it was like when the Autopias, and there was more than one back in the day at Disneyland. When they came around, transportation was kind of the exciting thing, like interstate, the interstate transportation system was kind of cutting edge, was kind of very leading edge technology, like to get people from coast to coast, efficiently. And this was just a smaller version of that. And so the Autopia, when it was put in, of course, now today isn't that day, but it was serving a purpose. Now it's more pure nostalgia because kids have way more exciting ways to entertain themselves. And there's a whole nother story to this because I listen to a lot of tech podcasts, and I know that there is some truth to this. It wasn't true for my daughter, but I've seen it with her friends. Now, see, I think it also depends where you live. My daughter she turned 16 in January, right? And so I've heard on a lot of tech podcasts that kids no longer want to drive themselves. Like they're not concerned with getting a driver's license anymore. Now, again, I'm 50. From the time I was 6, the only thing I wanted to do was drive stuff. I wanted to drive a riding lawnmower. I wanted to drive go-karts. I wanted to drive a motorcycle, like a mini bike. Like everybody in my neighborhood wanted to drive anything that had any kind of a motor. Like that was what we wanted to do. And so as soon as we turned 16, you went and got your license that day. You skipped school, you got your license. That's what I did. That's what all my friends did. And, everybody pretty much passed their tests. We got lucky. But I mean, we've been driving stuff. Like our grandpas took us to drive. We're going to talk about our grandpa here in a minute. Like you've been driving before you were 16. So you were fine. So you got your driver's license on your 16th birthday. Mallory was the same way. Like I had taken her driving, so had her mom. So on her 16th birthday, she skipped school. I mean, left school early, went and got her license. Boom, got it on her 16th birthday. And she's been driving ever since, on her own, no problem. But I've heard that kids nowadays, there's a lot of kids that have no desire to drive at all. Like there's kids that are 18 that don't have driver's licenses. And I mean, that's totally a personal choice, but it's just something that I have not seen in like our family. And she has a couple friends that are like that. Her old best friend who went to Walt Disney World with us when she was a kid, Molly, who played soccer with her when she was little, she was 18 and a half before she ever went to take her driver's test. And totally fine. She's awesome. She's hilarious. She's smart. She just never had that desire to like get out there and drive herself. But so if society changes, I think there's going to be less of a demand for maybe like that exciting like thing to go drive a little car at an amusement park. Like I love going to Six Flags. I didn't go to Walt Disney World, but at Six Flags they had MGB midgets, which were kind of like it's the same thing as, the Tomorrowland Speedway. They had the little cars, and I get with my grandpa or my dad, and they let me drive. I had the little rail down the middle. And man, I was driving. I was steering. I had the gas pedal. Of course, my dad or grandpa had the brake. But I mean, I was driving a car. It was a miracle. And there was nothing better in the world. But I mean, kids nowadays, if they don't want to drive a car when they're 16, they probably don't want to drive a car when they're 8. I don't know. So maybe times are changing. Give me your thoughts on that. Do you see that kids don't want to drive as much anymore? Excuse me. As much anymore? I would love, this is something I'd love to hear feedback on. If you have kids, where do they stand? If they're like 8, 10, 12, what are you seeing? Like, is it something that you feel like, do you think they're going to want to get their license right at 16? I mean, Mallory wanted it immediately because she wanted the independence. She wanted to drive herself to school. She wanted to drive herself to cheer. She wanted to get a job. So, on her 16th birthday, boom, January 2nd, whew, she went and got her license, passed first test, boom, she's been gone. I haven't seen her since hardly. It's crazy. Anyway, that's where we are. Let me get a sip here and then we'll get going. This is why having co-hosts on the podcast is a godsend. Okay, let's get to the feedback from last week. Trisha out in Indiana, who double shout outs for Trisha. One, they ran the half marathon down in Louisville with Craig and a couple other listeners. So good job down in Louisville because it was not great weather. So super shout out to them guys down there yesterday. She ran it with her daughter, Abby. The other shout out to Trish is because Abby is going to be on the college program this fall. So I got to see Abby down there, hopefully doing her thing, making magic. I met her when she was super young down there as a super young Disney fan. Now she's making the magic for us at Walt Disney World. And that makes me so proud because she's going to do Walt so proud. She's going to do her family out in Indiana so proud. And she's going to make memories for so many guests because she gets it. And we need people that are cast members that get it. And Abby gets it. And she's from a great family. So shout out to that family and Abby and Trisha. Okay, so here's what she says. This is so not the point of the podcast, but tell Pam 100%. I get her perspective. Our workout room is at our unfinished part of our basement too. And I spend most of the time looking around at all the stuff I need to throw out and I need to organize. It's hard to focus sometimes, and I've been a little behind, but I can completely relate to the cell phones of the late 90s and 2000s. One of my friends had the bag phone, and we all just thought it was so cool. And definitely remember having to watch the time and only call after 9 and on the weekends. Our kids don't know how good they have it now. One of my last flip phones was a pink Motorola Razr, and boy, did I think that phone was awesome. Last thought was about the texting. I remember having to awkwardly tell a friend not to text me because I didn't want to pay the 10 cents. I felt bad, but that expense would add up quickly. No kidding. I think about this because I try not to type. I mean, I hate typing on my phone. I can't. I have fat thumbs, and I don't have time for that. But my God, if my daughters and my wife were charged 10 cents a text, I would absolutely be in the poorhouse. I'd be in debtor's prison. I mean, I'd be like debtor's death penalty. Like they text nonstop. They don't text me nonstop because they know I don't answer. But I don't know who they're texting, but they're always texting. So yes, I get it. Yes, totally. All right, we got some more feedback. If I can get to the page here. It's refreshing. It's refreshing. This is exciting. Here we go. And the other feedback is, if I can find it here, why are we missing it? Because it's not the one that where we talk about where we're on 196. I lost the page. Here it is. Let's see. Trisha says, we are just over a month out from our Walt Disney World trip. I ordered my new tennis shoes so I could take some time to break them in, but it's hard because all the meals are booked and my daughter's magic band just arrived. I did get to deep dive into Disney planning with a friend who was taking her family for the very first time. We talked touring strategies and things to do on resort days. As there are 2 boys in the party, I highly recommended the Speedway, as I know the kids will love driving. Gas or electric, that attraction brings joy to almost every kid. I have precious photos my husband took from the spectators' benches. So see that, I mean, you can still have fun in that ride. And I think it will be better when it's electric because, I mean, you won't have the fumes. It's going to be more environmentally friendly. I get it is going to be better with the electric cars. And it's Tomorrowland, for the love of God. Like, I mean, it's supposed to be futuristic. And I mean, the combustion engine isn't futuristic anymore. It should be electric in Tomorrowland, right? It's not yesteryear. So yes. And the cars would look the same. And I mean, make them look more futuristic while you're in there. I mean, give them a little zhuzh, as Pam would say. All right. And finally, Dennis says, I've never tried Autopia at Disneyland, but I have only been there once. I think the electric cars are a great idea and needed change. One of my favorite memories from my family's trip to Walt Disney World was when I was a kid involved with Tomorrowland Speedway. We were doing a multi-generational trip with my grandparents. I got paired up with my grandpa to ride the Speedway. Halfway through the track, a major rainstorm came out of nowhere and soaked us to the bone. It rained so hard that I couldn't see where I was going, so Grandpa had to take the wheel. We laughed really hard about that. By the time we finished the track, the rain had stopped. Meanwhile, my mom and grandma had been shopping and were completely dry. Isn't that how it goes? And I mean, the track used to be a lot longer. Let's remember that. The track used to be way longer, shorter now. But that's epic. I mean, that's a story. Like, that's a memory. That's something that Dennis and Grandpa have, that memory Dennis will have forever of the day they got caught under the one cloud over the Speedway and it got him. I love to hear that because that'd be something that would happen to us too. Thanks for sharing that story, Dennis. That is awesome. So if you have feedback on this episode or any other episode of the show, please leave it because these are the best. It's patreon.com/Be Our Guest Podcast. And speaking of grandpas, that's what we're talking about today, but just a second, because I want to talk about two other things first briefly. One, the tornadoes that have been happening in the Midwest over this weekend. Of course, this show is called Mike in the Midwest. We live in a place where tornadoes are not uncommon. But this past weekend has been a terribly rough one for the folks up in Nebraska, up in Iowa, and especially over the past 24 hours down in Oklahoma. And you guys know I probably don't hide my faith too much on the podcast, but I also tried to respect everybody and not get preachy on things. I try to just make it a fun show for everybody that everybody can enjoy their way they like. But just take a few seconds to imagine that you're going about your day. It's a Sunday afternoon, Monday afternoon, whenever you're listening to the show. You're doing your thing. You're getting ready for work the next day, or you're getting ready to take a kid to a ball game, taking your daughter to dance. You're thinking about your next Disney trip. You're just doing what you do. You're just living life. And you get the tornado siren, which we get them here, this time of year. It's not uncommon. You might hear a tornado siren here this time of year once a month, once every few weeks. Go to the basement. Nothing usually happens. Get the all clear. Go about your life. But for these unfortunate people, now the good news is there weren't many folks that lost their lives, especially up in Nebraska and Iowa. And Oklahoma, unfortunately, there were a few folks that did lose their lives. We found out this morning. But just take a moment to pause and reflect. And, if you're a person of faith, send up a prayer, just what you can do, donate if you can. Just think of those folks, because the survivors just have a long way to come back. And that's just a way of life. And we all have our, things to worry about. I know we have listeners down in Florida. They have to worry about hurricanes. We had the terrible fires in Hawaii, a year ago. We have folks that deal with earthquakes. We all have pluses and minuses. I love living in the Midwest. That's just how it is. It's just something we deal with. But it's just been sticking with me that, tornadoes are so random. They can hit your house and miss the next one. And these people were going about their lives, and 15 minutes later, the only thing left of their subdivision is just a pile of rubble. It's amazing. And it was a beautiful house full of memories for 50 years before that. So just think of them. And so I just want to throw that out there because that is a Midwestern thing. On a lighter note, this morning, what I've been spending my time doing, and this is kind of wild, instead of watching sports, because it wasn't sports on a Sunday morning, I was watching the NFL draft most of yesterday and the days before, hoping my Missouri Tigers would get drafted. And a lot of them did, but my favorite player did not. Cody Schrader, my running back guy who led the SEC in rushing, but he signed with the 49ers after the draft, so I'm okay. But here's the thing. Of course, my daughter's a cheerleader. So this weekend down at Walt Disney World, at Wide World of Sports, they're hosting what's called the Worlds. And you're like, what's the Worlds? It's the World Cheerleading Championships. And this is I just came in from walking Riley. Now allergies are hitting me. Everything's hitting me all of a sudden. I open the mic and I'm struggling. So Worlds is the biggest of the cheerleading championships, obviously, in the world. Now, you've known in the past, if you listen to the show for any length of time, we used to go down to Walt Disney World just about this time of the year for something called Summit. Summit is the next level below Worlds. So Worlds is the top cheerleaders. I mean, the best in the world. Summit's under that. So we never got to go to Worlds. We had one team at our gym go to Worlds, but we were under that. So we've been watching Worlds upstairs because you got to subscribe to this service. It's like a private, it's called Flow Cheer. You got to pay money to watch it. And we've been watching it, and it's at Walt Disney World. So that's kind of fun because it's a Wide World of Sports. Like I know, that's it. That's at the State Farm Center. Ooh, this is in Arena 1, which is that first, like where you get the official Run Disney merch, like on the right when you go in the complex. Anyway, and we have our favorite teams because we've been watching these same teams. My favorite team's Senior Lead out of Kernsville, North Carolina. They're great. There's also some Top Gun teams out of Florida. But anyway, what I wanted to say is if you're down there when these cheer teams are there, because a lot of us will be, because there's going to be cheer teams there for about the next 3 weeks, whether Worlds, Summit, and then there's one after that called D2 Summit, smaller gyms. Here's the thing I want you to know, because I know, here's the thing, because I just want to drop just a little piece on you for a second as a cheer dad. I get that these guys, because there's guys on the teams too, because it's co-ed. Some of the teams are co-ed. Some are all girls. Most of them are between like 8 and 17. Okay. That's kind of the median age of all these cheerleaders, 8 and 17. And they can be terribly annoying at times. Because remember, I taught 5th and 6th grade for like 17 years. I taught that age of kids. They can be extremely annoying at times. And especially when they're in large groups, is teams and in a place that is exciting like Walt Disney World, where they're on, they're technically on vacation, but what they're really on, they're on a business trip. Let me just tell you, these kids have worked really, really hard, and these are elite athletes, especially the kids that are at Worlds right now. If you could see, and I'm going to post something on the Discord today, just to give you a snapshot of the athletic ability that these girls, because it's an all-girls team that I'm showing, they do things that are just incredibly athletic. And the discipline they have to do what they do with the choreography it's unbelievable that they can all do this together. The teamwork, the dedication, because these teams try out in July and they practice daily and they have to practice on their own from July, and they do the same 2 minute and 30 second routine. They don't have more than one routine. They have one routine. They do 2 minutes and 30 seconds from July until today, April, to get it right. They just do it over and over, and they just have that dedication to that process. And the thing is, if you're in the parks and you see these kids and they're annoying, or you see them kind of sad, or just, I know that they're at your hotel. Here's the thing. Just show them some grace, because here's the thing. Somebody could have slipped. They could have been going all out for this, gold medal. They call them globes. When you win, you get a globe at Worlds. And maybe that kid is the one that stepped over the line, because if you go outside the box on the mat, then you get a huge deduction. And think about it. If your team has been practicing daily for hours on end since July, back in your sweaty gym in North Carolina or Georgia or Minnesota or New York or Washington State, and these teams are from all over the world. I mean, England, Germany, Australia, Japan, they're from everywhere. If you happen to just have a bad day where your foot stepped outside of a white line and you caused your team a 0.5 deduction, which keeps your team from winning a globe, and now, I mean, you're still at Walt Disney World and your family wants to take you around to go to the Magic Kingdom, and you're kind of pouting, I mean, you could be standing next to that kid in line for Small World. Show some grace, because that's a lot to have on the shoulders of a 14-year-old. Because maybe they let down their teammates, and maybe their teammates are sad. Maybe they won. Maybe they're a little crazy. I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot for somebody at that age to understand what's happening with a competition that big, because it's a huge deal in the cheerleading world. So I'm just saying, and I know you guys, I'm preaching to the choir, because if you look at our Discord channel, you guys are the best. When you've talked about Simon and how his kids and how he sees things and how we all kind of always find the positive, you guys always find the positive. But here's the thing. If you could help me echo that, kind of give it what do they call on Twitter? A boost. Let's all try to spread that message that in our lives and at places like Walt Disney World, I don't think we think of that sometimes. I think if we see these athletes like in packs, and they're sometimes they're not behaved well. I get that. But if we could show some grace, maybe that they could come back to us and see a positive reaction to them, because understand, high or low, 13, 14, 15, even 16, 17, they've worked really hard, and they might not know how to process the stresses that they've been under. So I just want to throw that out there, because I mean they've been working hard, and it's a tough thing. Okay, last thing for today's topic. I was thinking about this on the treadmill. It's Grandpa's garage. So my grandparents grew up, or well, I mean, they didn't grow up there, but where I grew up with my grandparents was at their house, right? Now, my wife, Pam, teaches at an elementary school on the same street where my grandparents lived. She teaches at Combs Elementary, and my grandparents' house where they used to live is on the same street. It's about 3 blocks down from where they lived. House is still there. I have so many memories of that house. I loved it. It was a little bitty starter house. No basement. It's called a slab house, built on a slab of concrete. When my grandpa bought it, it was teeny tiny, but he added on, and I've gotten all this information from my dad, because obviously this was before I was born, but he added on like a screened in porch in the back at one point, and then he made that screened in porch, he like made it into a living room, because he made the like screen part like an actual walls. So that was our living room where he had a buck stove. So that made the house a little bit bigger. Then he added on a kind of from that room, he added on like a little bedroom for my dad. So the house got a little bit bigger over the years, but it was still really teeny tiny. No garage was on this house when he bought it. But my grandpa was a construction worker, cement mason. So at some point he built a detached garage there's like a little bitty hill on their driveway, and in the backyard he built a garage. Now my grandpa's garage held 2.5 cars, because it held his car, his truck, it held my grandma's car, his pickup, full size F-150, and it held the MG if you pulled it in sideways. It had to be sideways. So it held like 2.5. Now, Grandpa's garage was like as I look back, I didn't see this as a kid. I started thinking about this morning on the treadmill. It's funny how you think about things when you're walking on the treadmill for 3 hours. This was Grandpa's sanctuary. We spent a lot of time out there. So Grandpa's garage it was only about probably 50 steps from the back door at their house. But it had an attic in it. They had this little string that you pulled down from the attic, like a thing, and the ladder folded down so you could put storage things up there. We kept the train up there. We kept the Christmas tree up above the attic and the garage attic. But my grandpa always kept his truck in there, kept grandma's car in there, kept the MG in there until I had it. And when I got a better car and gave the MG back to my grandpa, he kept it in there. But the thing is, like, grandpa was a tinkerer. My grandpa was always fixing things. Like, he built things. He built a big water statue fountain thing for his church. I mean, it was like 3 tiers. Big old thing. He built for the lobby of our church. And I remember he built it in the garage. So there was room to like do things. He had a big old workbench. And he had above the workbench, he had a pegboard. And my grandpa meticulously had like on that, it was like, have you ever played that game where you got to like draw lines between the dots and try to make the boxes? And like when you make a whole square, you put your like initial in there and like try to get the most squares. That's what that pegboard looked like. And he stuck the little rods in and he'd hang everything from there. That's what my grandpa did. And he had it was a huge wall and he had all of this stuff laid out meticulously. My grandpa was like insane with how clean he kept his garage. His garage also had a furnace in it. So he could be out there like in the dead of winter and it would be just warm. I don't know how he had a furnace in there looking back, but he had a furnace in the garage. I remember it was right there by where we parked the MG. And he had cabinets and it smelled though. Like it smelled pleasing because it smelled like gasoline. It kind of smelled like, I don't know, like it just had the smell of a garage. Like it smelled like that stuff you put onto like finish like a desk or something, like lacquer. Whatever project he was doing, it had like the scent of that project. But I just remember we spent so much time out there, but it wasn't necessarily it was never wasted time. Like we worked on that MG for tons of time out in the garage, and sometimes it'd be snow on the ground. And, sometimes it'd be in the summer and he'd just have the garage door up. So we'd just kind of take it in. You'd hear the cicadas just bzz, 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 as the sun was setting. We'd be in the garage. The radio was always on, AM radio, crackling to KMOX to the Cardinals game. And I eventually got that radio. And that's kind of why I fell in love with listening to talk radio, was that radio my grandpa gave me. But it was just one of those things, like on the one wall where his pickup stayed on his side of the garage. That's where all like the lawn tools were, like his weed eater. He even had like an edger that was orange or Black and Decker. He loved that thing, but he always told me I couldn't use it. I guess it was dangerous. It was probably missing a guard or something, because my grandpa once cut off his toe. He had to get it put back on. Because he would always take like the safety stuff off of things. He took it off the circular saw one time too, and it scared me to death. Grandpa lived dangerously. He stepped on a nail in Haiti one time and went all the way through his foot, and they had to rush him to a hospital in the back of a Toyota when he was down there building a church. Yeah, true story. My grandpa was like Indiana Jones. But I don't know. Like, I just remember Grandpa's garage. It was 50 feet from Grandma and Grandpa's house, but it was like, looking back, and I don't even think I thought about this until just now. It was just like this little place that I never realized I enjoyed as much as I did until like today. When you were out there, it was just like a little sanctuary. And I'm sure it was like this for my grandpa, right? It was just the place where if he didn't have anything to do, he just went out there and tinkered. And, you know, again, think about the times, how they've changed. Like, he didn't, you know, my grandpa didn't sit in his chair in the house and like get on Twitter. There was no Twitter. There wasn't an iPhone. There wasn't an iPad to mess with. There wasn't, 150 channels on TV. This was the 70s and the 80s. There wasn't as much to do. And that's why my grandpa was, but here's the thing. There were so many benefits of it. That's why my grandpa was so good at everything. He was so good with his hands. He could build things. He could fix things because he spent his time learning how to do those things. And now that I look back, I can do a podcast, which my grandpa couldn't do. I can do a lot of stuff on the computer, but I would love to trade that to have the skills my grandpa had. My grandpa had so many great skills, and they were all because he had this home base out of his garage. And he was always fixing stuff for other people, never charged them for it. But like, if anything was broken, he always had it on his tool bench there, always fixing it. One of the things he was always building. He was always building like these windmill things, and he always made them. So the one thing he was always working on improving, and this is my last story because we're going super long and I said I wouldn't. So he was a cement mason, right? And one of the things that cement masons do at the end, like when they're pouring a concrete slab, is they have to float it, which means they take this big thing and they go back and forth with this thing called a float to smooth out the concrete. And so he built this windmill thing. So when the wind blew, he made a man, no kidding, like with a little house behind him. I wish I could find a picture of this. I don't think there is a picture because it was hanging on my grandma's laundry line. He put it on the top. But when the wind would blow, the man would go, and he would paddle the concrete real fast the harder the wind blew. My grandpa made this thing from scratch, and it was genius. I mean, and we would always laugh. We'd be like, every time we get a big storm or like a windy day, we'd be like, that guy needs overtime. He needs overtime. He's working too hard. He's gonna have a heart attack. And grandpa would laugh because he made that thing he made the blades out of like leftover stuff. I mean, he counterbalanced it, because at first it wasn't working great. Then he brought it back in. It was a scientific process at work. Because my grandpa didn't go to, he didn't even go to high school. He was one of the smartest guys I ever knew because he was, from backwoods Kentucky. But grandpa's garage, so much was learned there by me that I never took advantage of. So let me ask you this as we wrap up. A lot of stuff in today's show. Did you have a grandpa's garage? And I have that in quotes here. Could have been grandma's kitchen. Could have been mom's kitchen. Could have been anything. But where was your grandpa's garage? And where did you learn those things? And where did you it's like looking back, it's almost like a warm blanket. I wish I could go back there one more time. It's still there. It's right down the street from where my wife teaches, but unfortunately we don't own the house anymore. If I went in there, I'd probably go to jail. So I can look at it from afar, but can't go there anymore. What a shame. So I hope you're having a great week, and hope you'll join us tonight for the live call-in show. Would love to hear from you. But until we get back together again next week, you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon.